Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 65th segment of Be Inspired with Buzopat, life-changing reality talk. Honorable Ambassador Buzopat.Topic is still your host, and I am so happy, to be here again on this community of committed people, where we embrace our truth that leads to our freedom. Yes. Today, we will be talking on the topic, the preachers and prayer. I really do not know how I had to come about this topic, but I believe God that somebody somewhere is meant for you. Okay, and the preachers are the golden pipe through which the holy oil flows. That's what I am meant to understand. And the pipe must not just be golden; it must be open and perfect as well. The preacher is to be a praying person, really. Must be a praying person, because the prayer makes a preacher. You cannot remove the two, and the prayer makes a preacher very powerful and very useful, and a super tool in the hands of God. Okay, it gives life to the power and and all that the preacher does. It is the prayer that makes the difference in the life of a preacher. The real message is made in the place of prayer. Okay, and it is in the place of prayer that the real man of God is made. Okay, and that man of God that is made in prayer stays in prayer in order to remain whatever it is in the call. There's no way God's plan is to make a man far more important than the message, than the method. But the problem we have in our life is that most times we try to come up with a beautiful what's it called, a beautiful method plan in which we will make our church grow and make our members happy, and keep doing those things that we expect to do. We set out so many tactics, get so many committees, get so many head of this and this and then in church, and thereby we lose the focus to the main person, and then we concentrate on making the plan and the method. But you know what? God makes the preacher, and God's plan is to make a man far more important than any method. God's method is men. Men are the method of God. Why men are busy looking for the method to make the preaching and the gospel, okay, God is looking for a better man. God is looking for better men that will be there for his message. That is true. The preacher's great desire is to please God alone. And that makes his message one of the... When you see a preacher who spends time alone with God, the messages are the greatest and the sweetest, because it is not in their power. They are just a vessel. We are always, like I said, trying to make new method, plan and all that for the church to grow and all that, but that's actually not the assignment. Because if you are in tune and in line with what God wants, he will see him do exceedingly, and supernatural things will be flowing out from you. You don't need to make those efforts, but we are the one concentrating on thinking that we had to plan it for God. But God has already had it all planned. All he wants is you. Because he makes the preacher, and the preacher makes the message. All the preacher says is brought to life by the nature, by who the preacher is, because you can't separate it. It is here now. I don't even want to go into what we do as preachers, but I want us to just understand what is expected as a preacher. It is the nature of the life of a preacher, and that makes the followers of Christ, to become real Christians, and then understand that the world will change based on the character of the followers of Christ. The good things we expect to see in the world will flow out from what the preacher has impacted in the life of the members. And because the people, they are the nation. There's no nation without people. There's no society without people. We make the community. We make everything. And so what am I saying? Preaching is not an act of an hour. It's not an act of love. It's not. It just. It's not even It's the pouring out of life. When you preach, you're pouring out life. You're pouring out something. You're changing destinies. What's coming out of you? You may be the person that is speaking, but the words coming out of you is devouring, is leveling mountain, is filling valleys, is upgrading lives, is changing destiny, is transforming. It is going far. It is watering desert. It is sowing. It is leveling every obstacle because the word is flowing out from a right vessel who has spent time to God. The message is forceful because the man is forceful. The message coming out from you is holy because the man is holy. The message is filled with God's blessing because the man is filled. Yes, your message will be full of God's blessing because you're filled already with God's blessing. That is the way it is. Paul did not change the gospel to suit his own ideas, but he let the gospel enter into his heart and soul. His life became the gospel, and that is why today it is easier for us to quote everything. The life-giving power of the message cannot rise above the man that is giving the message. It's not possible because dead men give dead messages, okay? And dead messages kills. Everything depends on the spiritual nature of the preacher. That is what we must understand. That the gospel of Christ does not depend on what people think. It has no power to spread itself. It moves as the man entrusted with it moves. The preacher must live the gospel. He must live the life of the gospel. And it is truth. It must become part of his life and part of him. That is what is expected of a preacher. The driving power of love must be in the life of a preacher. It must be seen in the life of a preacher, because the denying of his own wishes, and the things that he cannot effortlessly do those things he actually wanted to do. It's no longer in you. If you're a called preacher, there are so many sacrifices. And in denying those your wishes, they are the reason why, because by the time you deny yourself wishes, that means your heart, your soul, your mind, your head, your bones are already surrendered to God. And that surrendering to God is what makes you a super vessel in God's hands, okay? And that is why you must be as wise as a serpent, okay? But as meek and harmless as a dove. You must. That is what a preacher is supposed to be, The preacher of this day, I tell you, okay, are very weak in praying. They are really very weak. They are proud of their learnings. Their English, they learned how to come and command, how to do this, because it's more about learning it and not about being led. The people of old, most of the things they didn't even know how it came about. They were not literate. They were not intelligent. They were not super, but the grace of God made a lot of things possible for them. But today we go from one teaching to the other to know how to put it to you and all that. And then we left, but this is not actually what I don't want us to talk about. What is going on in our churches and in our lives, that is not the message today. But what is expected of a preacher, so that a preacher will know, that every preacher, must make prayer their important vessel. Prayer must be a part of the life of a preacher. That is a must. And it's because if you don't pray well, you'll be weak in God's work. That is it. Because a preacher who doesn't pray well is actually powerless, to bring God's good news to people. And that is why we have thousands of churches everywhere. In every community, we have hundreds of churches. Yet the world society is deteriorating from bad to worse every day, and we have nothing to say about it because, of course, we have left exactly what we're supposed to do and doing what God didn't ask us to do. And don't forget that even when Saul had good intention, and he went getting all the fat cows and all that, what did God say? Obedience is better than sacrifice. I didn't ask you to do any of those. So understand exactly what the situation is and know what is expected of you as a man of God. You can't do one without one. A preacher and prayer are an item. There are 5 and 6, and then we have to be the best. We have to give God what it takes, and we have lost the true idea of preaching and power in preaching. Really, believe me, we have lost the conviction for sin. That is it, and we have lost the rich experience that Christians do in the presence of God. When the glory of God comes down, when you see a real preacher preaching everywhere, you see people crying, you see people atoning for their sin, you people who crying for mercy, because that is what the presence of God does when a real preacher is preaching. We've lost the power that make men know, know their sins and change their ways in the presence of God. We've lost making Jesus, become the focus. Now it's all about money. Okay, the power that always comes, it comes because as a result of a real and true preaching. That is why the power comes. That power that you see that makes a lot of things, that makes the gospel, that makes it look as if you've never heard that kind of preaching before. It comes because a preacher has availed himself or herself to the mercy of God and has accepted the duties that are meant to him. A preacher and prayer, they are item. You can't take one out from another. Are you a preacher? Do you understand what your call and duty is? Do you understand it? Have you lost it? Have you lost it? Are you actually doing what you're supposed to do? Are you a preacher? I see something happened to my friend, based on all this talk, like I always say, I get a lot of call, I get a lot of people who call me for so many things. And of course, what was going on with the preacher and the wife? Of course, if you see my friend, he has lost the glory. He almost died. He was crazy. Okay, you don't keep understand. That was what made me begin to think about what actually is a preacher supposed to do in the life of people. What is a preacher of God supposed to be? There are temptations that are beyond. You see, we are human. We keep making excuses that are human. But when you want to take a call, when you want to answer a call, please check the implications, check the disadvantages, check the temptations that are attached to it, and know that you can always call on God to fill in the gap. And don't fall as a human and keep making excuses of a human. There's no way God will tolerate or understand. Because if you're a vessel for him, you need to bring him respect. You need to bring him dignity. You need to make his name holy. You don't need to bring ridicule and make his name a laughing stock because you think that you're just human. A lot is happening, but that is not the message today. I'm judging no one and condemning no one. I just want you to know that if you're a preacher, there are basics, there are things you need to do. You and prayer is supposed to be an item. Remove one, you will be a powerless Christian. Remove one, you will not give God the glory that is meant to be. Please, can we preachers understand that preachers are preachers and preachers and prayers are the same? And if you cannot go to God, a preacher is a vessel. Like I said, is a gold pipe through which oil of God flows. And that pipe must not just be golden, it must be open, that it can flow to everybody, and it must be perfect because a lot of people are looking up to you. And yeah, it's true that Jesus Christ said that God said, look unto me, the author and finisher of our faith. But it's rare and it's difficult for members of your congregation not to look up to you. It is difficult because we call Papa, we believe that there's something we take a man of God to be. We have, no matter what we say, you can't separate human from it. A man of God, we reverence them. We want to worship them. We want to call them anything. We want to take whatever they say, because even Bible said, obey. The established word of God, you'll be established, but your man of God, the man of God, you prosper. That is it, and people will obey it. And if you know you're carrying that man to please, let your ways and actions give God glory. This is my message for us today. A preacher and a prayer, they are an item. 5 and 6. You can't take a preacher away from a prayer, and you cannot take a prayer away from the preacher. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Be Inspired with Buzopat, life changing Tonic, and then follow me on Instagram, Be Inspired at Ambassador the Buzo, and then follow us on Facebook on Be Inspired with Buzopat. See you next week. May God bless you. Bye.